Hey, this is Doc Solo, the OG from Generation Geek. And today, listen, you guys have shown so much love on our videos on Blue Marvel that we just had to get this brother, the creator, in the studio with us today. We are talking today with Mr. Kevin Grevioux, creator extraordinaire. Hey, roll the clip. Let's get this party started. All right. Hey, son, we got the man in the house, Mr. Kevin Grevioux.
The legend himself.
So let me tell you something, just so you know, you are in the presence of probably the greatest Blue Marvel fan walking the face of the earth currently. This one right here, my boy, is the biggest.
It is not even close. Literally, I have custom figures of this. I've spent hundreds of dollars.
Oh my goodness!
When there wasn't even an action figure created, like there's not a book that I have not read for sure.
And
cool.
Let me tell you something. We are so glad that you took time out of your schedule. Yeah, I try to give myself credit as a pretty decent interviewer, but you have so many credits, man. When I Wiki PG, I remember you as a security guard on Deep Space Nine. That's how far back we go, bro. I'm like, I remember him. Deep Space Nine, man. And then
for my time.
That was before his time. That was 93.
Yeah. I was an extra on that show.
Yes.
That was one of my first gigs when I got to LA.
Deep Space. You were the security officer on Deep Space Nine. Yes. Because believe it or not, the reason I remember is because wasn't a whole bunch of us on the show. You know what I mean? And so
yeah. I was one of very few spots on the show.
Yeah, but man, your credits, your career has been nothing but fascinating to me personally. As a creator and as an educator, I have followed a lot of your progress, man. And first of all, I want to say congratulations, man. You are an inspiration. Seriously.
Thanks a lot, brother. Thanks a lot.
You know, especially to this old dog, man. And I'm just happy to have you here. You know, really. I've circled you only, it was a few years ago. Oh, and I'm going to put you on blast. Just know that. You owe this guy autographed Blue Marvel. Because I don't know if you remember, I inboxed you on LinkedIn a few years ago, and I sent you a sketch of Blue Marvel that I did just as a warm up, and I showed it to you, and he's like, "I gotta send it. I'll send him an autograph copy." So just know,
you're waiting.
What did Riley say? Pay what you owe. Pay what you owe.
It definitely goes back.
That's my bad.
No, we know you're busy, man. Trust me. We charge it to your head, not your heart, brother. We charge it to your head. But you've been busy, man. I believe you just had your directorial debut with King of Killers. Yes, I have.
Congratulations. I'm ready to direct 2 more features, so you know I got a lot on my plate right now.
I know you do.
Absolutely.
I know you do. Though busy people get busy people, man, and I understand that. You are nothing if not active, and I think that's the thing that really resonated with me the most is the level of activity that you maintain. Like I was just recently in Texas, and I saw that you even have a convention coming up. I believe I forget the name of it. I think is it in Texas? I was looking at shows in Texas.
I think it is. It's going to be like the 8th to the 10th or something.
Yeah. And I'm like, but you stay moving, man. You know, between comics and voice work and acting and directing, and I mean, you earned all that, great bro. I got to give it all to you. Right?
This is actual voice. There's a method to my madness too. You know, I try to tell a lot of mentees, so to speak, or young people that when you're trying to make it into a creative industry, especially if you don't know anyone, like I didn't know anyone, you have to take a lot of risks, you know, and you have to approach things differently because things don't fall into your lap. So what you have to do, regardless of what you came out here to do or in whatever creative field, you have to learn how to diversify your creative lexicon. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I came out here strictly to be a writer. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be an actor. I didn't want to get into voiceovers. I didn't want to do stunt work. None of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to be a writer. But I guess the Lord had other plans because when I got out here, because of my then sized, you know, the timbre of my voice, this, that, and the other, these other doors open, you know, for me. And so, you know, you need money, you need to eat, things of that nature. So I started getting involved with those things, you know, and I had always been a comic book fan, but I got 2 rejection letters from Marvel back in the 80s. So I was like, well, that's not going to happen. Yeah. But after I did Underworld, that door, you know, kind of opened up. You know what I'm saying? And so I walked through that particular portal and, you know, started doing that. And I saw that that was a way to get your movies made or your work seen. A lot of times the way it worked in Hollywood, especially in the 90s on back, they had these fiats, you know, that I didn't think really made any sense. Like, you know, well, you know, if you don't grab me with your script in the first 10 pages, right, you know, in the trash it goes, things like that, which is stupid. Yeah. You know, yeah, sure. But what I did understand is that the reason why that was true is because some of these development executives or what have you, they would have to go home and read 10 scripts that weekend. So their feeling was, if you don't grab me quick, I don't have time to slave over the script and figure out whether or not it's good. First 10 pages, if it doesn't grab me, I'll you know, in the trash it goes. But here's what I noticed. It is a lot easier to read a graphic novel than it is a script. Absolutely. Because visually, everything is right there in front of you. You're spoon-fed.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
What's up, guys? This is Jay. As you guys know, we love making content for you guys, but as we're starting to notice, many of you are watching, but many of you are not subbing. So why not join the Geek fam? Come rock with us. Just hit that sub button, hit the bell. We'll love to have you. Y'all be blessed. Peace.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So you know immediately whether or not you like it or not, especially if the concept is codified in those first few pages. You know, so I understood that. I just didn't think it made a whole lot of sense because you could pass up a lot of good scripts because they might not get going until page 20, you know, or, you know, so, and that's just the way it is. So I've learned how to, you know, kind of navigate the industry after a while. And it's been, you know, it's been a challenge, you know, but a good one.
Absolutely. How did the whole Underworld thing, how did you kick that off? How did that start? How did that even get introduced?
Well, it actually started with Len Wiseman. I will give credit where credit is due. I met him when I was an extra on Stargate, and he was a prop assistant, you know, on the same movie, and he thought I was someone famous. You know, I wasn't, but he liked my look, this, that, and the other. And so we struck up a friendship. So, you know, we were friends for a few years, and I remember he was trying to become a director himself. And he had a meeting with, I think it was Dimension Films. And they wanted to do a werewolf movie because Blade had done so well for the vampire genre. So he called me and he said he knew I was a big genre guy. He said, well, what do you think? And I'm like, well, not much. And the reason being is because werewolves aren't, if I can say this, and I think you'll know what I mean, werewolves are not, quote unquote, sexy in the way that a lot of other monsters might be, because a lot of the werewolf, acceptance comes from the design of the makeup. You know what I'm saying? And if the makeup isn't good, the creature doesn't look good. Like the hair is matted. There's a question as to whether or not the traditional werewolves have even looked like wolves. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I saw a cool werewolf was probably the movie Howling.
Oh yeah.
And it was the first time they had a snout-nosed bipedal werewolf creature, that I thought really looked good. And so at the time there were only 2, maybe 3 werewolf movies to speak of, which was, like I mentioned, Howling, American Werewolf in London.
Werewolf, yep.
And I guess you could say the original Wolfman, because that's the first time any of us had ever really heard of it. You know what I'm saying?
What's that, Lon Chaney, I believe? Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened is that I said, I'm interested if we can do a snout-nosed bipedal creature, then I'm down. And I said, give me about a week and let me see what I can come up with.
Okay.
And so I came up with an idea that he liked. And he was like, okay, well, I kind of banged it out for him. And he said, well, maybe we should meet this week sometime so we could start banging out this story or whatever. I'm like, fine. So we had this session. And at the end of the session, I said, now look, we can't go in there with just this one idea, because if they don't like it, then what do we do? And I had already heard of an experience with a buddy of mine who had this idea, and he went into this, I think, one of these companies, and they had something similar, but he didn't have anything else.
Right.
And so, when he said, well, here's our idea, blah, 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 he's like, we have something like that already. What else you have? He looked at his partner and was like, nothing.
Right.
And the guy was like, well, hey, look, come back when you have something and let's see what we can do together. And they never did get back in that room. So you have to make the most of your opportunity when you get it.
Absolutely.
So I said, he was like, well, what other idea do we have? I'm like, what if we did a Romeo and Juliet story? But instead of Montagues and Capulets, we have werewolves on one side, but vampires on the other, and make it this surrealistic, interracial love story that takes place against the backdrop of a centuries-old race war. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest, he didn't say anything. He just looked at his feet. He was like, dude, is this going to work? So we do it. And I said, if we do it right, if we do it right, and the rest was history. So I, banged out the first script, and now we had a framework, and that became Underworld.
The series.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Underworld is special to me because I remember my wife and I, we were going through a rough patch. And we started dating one another again, right? We weren't separate. We just had started dating one another again. And it was 2 movies that were impactful. We decided to go on weekly dates. And one was the movie Life, right? And then there was this one little movie that was in the back of the theater. It didn't get a lot of promotion. Like, it wasn't well marketed, right? That was the thing about Underworld. And we were like, well, let's check out this Underworld thing. You know what I mean? And we literally, you know how they put it in the back. You know what I mean? You got the main screens. And we went back there, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then from there, I started hearing about it everywhere. You know what I mean? Because I remember that it wasn't, again, it wasn't a huge marketing budget behind it. Yeah. And so it really was like this lightning striking with Underworld. You know? And man, I'm telling you, listen, your template with Underworld has inspired so many creators, right? I would hazard to say that it has in its own way reshaped the IP pitching process for a lot of your young creators. You know, when they heard how you navigated from the graphic novel concept to getting this franchise, not the movie, the franchise. You know, and it
wasn't a comic book before. It wasn't a comic book before. Looking back and seeing how things happened, I wish it had been, because I was a huge comic book fan. But back then, you didn't have the same kind of resources, you know, that you do to make comic books now. So, you know, but I wish it had. But yeah, it was a comic book type movie.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's transformative, to say the least. Now, I want to back up a little bit though, because I got to give some credit. You got roots in the Shy, so we represent here, right? Yeah. I came across, I reached out when I read this, Bad Fella, right? And you mentioned Funtown. And I was like, hold up. I remember I inboxed you. I'm like, wait a second. The only way you know about Funtown is you have to be a Chicago native. No, Stony, 95th and Stony Island Avenue. Yeah. How much has that played a role?
My grandfather would take us there when we came to Chicago, because you know, I grew up in, you know, Minnesota, Boston, and New Jersey, and so, you know, we would hear about, you know, that commercial, you know, 95th and Stony Island Avenue, Funtown, you know,
for the kid in
you know, and we had to
Stony Island Avenue. I know.
Oh yeah. So we took us there, man, and it was cool. You know, it was cool. It was cool.
Fantastic, man. We're gonna lay. Just so you know, we're going to lay claim to you. Minnesota can
absolutely.
You know, Chicago. We're gonna lay claim to you for officially.
Right.
Officially. Now, I know Jay's got some questions, because he's been posting a lot of Blue Marvel content, right?
Oh, wow. Right.
I mean, to the point where his last video, he had to tell him we're putting Blue Marvel in timeout.
Yeah, we give him a break.
Talk about that, Jay.
Give him a break. Well, before that, because since we were going back, what I found really interesting in doing my research about you is about, obviously we could tell that you're an intellectual person, obviously, but your actual education and, you know, you in school and going to Howard and stuff like that. Like, can you speak on that and that whole plan, and why you are not a freaking microbiologist somewhere right now?
Right, or geneticist.
Or
what?
Geneticist,
Yeah. You know, to tell you the truth, man, I probably never should have majored in that, looking back at it. It's just that science was always my best subject in school. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, when I got to college, it's like, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I only knew that I liked science.
Right.
And, you know, if you're a science major, you know, what's the most, you know, likely thing you're going to do? You're going to go to med school.
Yeah.
But I had was going for an internship at Howard's Hospital.
Okay.
And man, just seeing some of the subtle things that doctors have to see on a daily basis, like I saw some throw up on the floor.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, no. You know. And I don't necessarily think I'm a squeamish guy, but seeing stuff like that, I'm like, and that's one of my pet peeves about some of these movies. Like when they show someone throwing up and you actually see it coming out of their mouth, I'm like, oh my God.
Wait, hey, brother Grievous. Now, seriously, you can't have the voice that you have and the stature that you have.
Oh my goodness! I was just like, nah.
I said, no, this ain't happening.
Yeah. So my thing was, you know, let me go into research, you know, and that was, I thought, infinitely more interesting. You know, I worked at NIH, you know, at the National Cancer Institute in the Laboratory of Biochemistry, you know, as a lab tech. You know, I think we were working on xeroderma pigmentosum, you know, at the time. And, you know, it was, we worked downstairs from Robert Gallo, the guy who isolated the AIDS virus, you know.
Okay.
You know, so just being in that environment, you know, to me was fascinating. But, you know, it didn't stay long, you know, it didn't last because I think one of my senior years, I was bitten by the film bug because Spike Lee came out with She's Gotta Have It. And that turned my whole thought process around because I didn't even know that brothers could direct movies. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And of course, I knew no one who was in the film department at Howard. I mean, Howard had one, but none of my friends were film majors. I never met anyone who was a film major. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, but it's funny, when I was in grad school, which was the year, 2 years after She's Gotta Have It came out, the film department had grown exponentially because now we had someone to look at who actually made it. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why, you know, regardless of what the current political timber is when it comes to, you know, diversity and all that, why I think it's necessary, why I think representation is necessary.
It is.
Yeah.
Because you can see yourself and you can be inspired. And it doesn't mean you can't be inspired by people who don't look like you. I mean, look, I want to get into the comic book industry because I like, you know, John Buscema's artwork or Walt Simonson's artwork. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
He didn't look like me, but so what? You know, I wanted to play football because, you know, my favorite football player was, you know, maybe, you know, Fred Tarkenton, you know, the Minnesota Vikings and Alan Page. You know, so I wanted to do those things. So you can be influenced by anything.
You can.
So,
I love that.
You know, yeah. So, you know, I you know, made the switch, you know, and look, the rest is history, I guess, you know.
I like the point that you made about, because I 100% agree. You know, I believe as fans of any type, right, whether it be sports, comics, movies, I do believe in qualified representation, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not gratuitous, not tokenization, right? Not trying to hit certain quotas that are mandated by some governing party, right?
For sure.
Exactly.
Because when it's done right, granted, it drives it home, but just as people, you know, one of the things I teach my students is that we find points of connectivity just as humans.
We do. Yeah.
Across racial barriers, across socioeconomic barriers, right? If there's something that vibes with you, you know, it may be because you studied science. It may be because you're directing a movie, right? And your color has nothing to do with it. We'll find points of connectivity, right? Because I think that's how we're wired, you know. But to your point, representation does matter as long as it's qualified and excellent. I want to see people doing what I'm doing that are doing it well, you know, not just plugged in for the sake and then set up for failure. You know,
yeah. You know, exactly. I also believe too, you know, you don't have to be at the top of your game in order to get on the playing field. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
You know, I don't have to be Lawrence Taylor in order to be a good linebacker. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to be Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady to be a good quarterback.
Right.
I can be me and just do the best that I can and still fight the home. And that's the way you have to look at it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. And speaking of the representation, that's, for me, is where the Blue Marvel thing comes in, because obviously growing up, I'm 29, about to be 30. Obviously growing up, obviously having a father figure and stuff like that. But in comics, all I had was Static growing up. That was my thing growing up, with Static. And, you know, as I grew and I started to become a man, and now I'm looking out, I was a professional athlete, played in college. But after looking at my life outside of college and after college, that's when the Blue Marvel bug hit me, and I was able to see someone, which is crazy that a character can inspire you so much. But when I'm reading Blue Marvel and he has all of these doctorates and these degrees, I just finished my 3rd degree last week, my master's, and going for my doctorate because of him, because of a character that you created. It inspired me to. I'm like, man, he was able to be a Marine. He was able to do this in football, and he was able to. And obviously, we don't have superheroes yet, but just the inspiration that it's able to give even somebody like me. And I had a good role model, but it just like it inspired me to want to be more. Because I'm like, oh yeah, we can do that too. You know, so
yeah, exactly.
Where did he come
the thing
from?
is, I think my whole thing is, the Blue Marvel did things that I did. He was into science. He played football.
Yeah.
That's what he got his degree and things like that. I didn't have the pleasure of joining the military, but I was in ROTC. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I tried to give him heightened aspects, or have him engage in heightened aspects of what I did or wanted to do, things like that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And of course, there had, not been superheroes created by Black folks, that were part of mainstream. Milestone, I think, was another company that wound up selling their stuff to DC.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the characters that Black characters in Marvel and DC had weren't created by people who look like us. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
And if they were, a lot of times they only reflected our culture in a peripheral sense. You know what I'm saying? And so I wanted to create a character that basically did the things that I did and understood the culture the way I did, and see what would happen. I mean, even in Blue Marvel, I mean, it had a pre-existent path, because I, at least in part, created him when I was, a kid, loving superheroes and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And so, when I got the opportunity, I brought the concept to Marvel, and they snapped it up right away, snapped it up right away. And, of course, there had never been a Black superhero who could go toe to toe with, Thor, Superman, Hulk, you know what I'm saying? On that level, not that he's more powerful, but just as.
Right.
Yeah.
So, he's going to, dish out what he has to take,
Right. Sure.
Well, I would disagree with that. Just FYI, I would disagree with that. Power scale, all you got to do is read the comments of our Blue Marvel videos. And when I tell you,
what you created him to be, he has transcended to something more, which is the first time, and I'm big into like power scaling and stuff. It is the first time I have seen any character in Marvel, be written the most consistently. And obviously he doesn't have as many appearances, but he's the most consistent character. He doesn't take losses to bums. Like, if somebody does, it's like Thanos that gets the upper hand on him or something like that. He's not losing to just anybody. So he has been well taken care of. So it's impressive.
Yeah. I think one time I saw one of these writers had him get doged by America Chavez. I'm like, oh, come on. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
So you bring up an interesting point. I like to, because a lot of young creators, I have some in my school. They're still kind of trying to plot out their course as far as where they want to go, independent versus mainstream, right? With Blue Marvel, having the intimate history that you have with the character, it being one of your earliest creations pre-Marvel, was it hard giving that character to Marvel? And then second part to that, do you think he's been well maintained? Has he been in good hands?
Okay, so the way I look at it, it wasn't hard because the thing is, what was I going to do with them at the time? Even though making a comic book is cheaper than making a movie, you have to have the resources and you have to be plugged in enough to be able to do it, you know, by yourself or independently. And so I thought it would work with Marvel because I was working for the company at the time. And I was going to introduce him in the pages of the New Warriors. But, you know, I couldn't get the then editor to sign off on it, you know, because I wanted to do it a certain way. So I was like, and then we got involved with Secret Invasion, and that just derailed everything I was trying to do. So my thing was, it wasn't hard to give up then. You know, it was an opportunity that I saw. And it's like, this is a way to become, you know, to make it kind of like a Marvel First. You know, a black character created by a black guy. You know what I'm saying? You know, black male superhero, blah, blah, blah. As far as has he been well maintained, I'm going to say yes. They haven't let me come back to him. And I've pitched a myriad of different, you know, series with him. But, you know, they say no, and then they give the idea to somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Yeah.
And that I don't like. But I'm not the only one. You know, I've heard John Byrne talk about getting his ideas taken. I hear, you know, about other creators that we know of. They've had their ideas taken, and that's just par for the course. You know, once you bring something to the entire, you know, to the table, you know, that is Marvel comics. But, you know, I think for the most part, he's been treated with respect. There are certain things that I did not want him to have, you know, certain powers that they gave him anyway, because I was I wasn't trying to create a direct Superman analog, except in the most peripheral of senses. Like, you know, part of the original concept is that what if the most powerful, you know, most well-loved, most popular superhero was black, but no one knew it because he had to wear a mask over his face. And then what happens when you discover that that person, that idol of millions, so to speak, is a black man? How does that affect the world? How does that affect what was going on at that time? Things of that nature. And so, you know, there were some things that they wouldn't let me do that they let, you know, the other writer like Al Ewing do, you know, which bothered me.
The ultimate.
And it's like, you see, this is the problem, but that's the way the world works. That's the way the creative world works, you know. And if you're going to play in that, well, you just have to accept it. Like, I had this one idea to do a kind of Black Avengers, but it was going to be called Avengers Black Ops. And they said like the idea, but then I didn't hear anything for a while. And I had Blue Marvel on the team, and then Al Ewing comes along, and they do Mighty Avengers.
With
Blade. I had it. I'm like, see, and that's like I said, I mean,
Page, it's mostly like that.
That's the way it works, and so that's why I think it's important for us to have our own characters, our own companies, so we can make our own products, so we can make the money, and that stuff can't happen. You know what I'm saying? Or there's less of a chance of that happening. You know, but that's the corporate world. You know, it really is. And if you're gonna play in that playground, you know, you have to be willing to get your knees skinned. You know, so that's just the way it works.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Today I learned. That's no, seriously, because, you know, I had a mentor at the animation studio, and he was at that time, you got to remember, it was a while ago. He had already been a 20-year vet in the industry across Marvel and DC, and I was a lay comic fan. I was more into animation, but he kind of took me under his wing. But the thing that I got most of from him, aside from the one-on-one drawing, Jordan used to be a kid playing in his corner, playing with his action figures while I would go to my sessions, right?
Right.
And so, but the thing I learned from him the most was how the industry worked. And when I got my first offer, it was Eddie Berganza to work on Superman. I was 24, right? I was 24, and I was with a group of other artists trying to get in. And for me, it was never about being in the industry after my education thing, because I found it largely undesirable the way that it functioned. Right, because he broke it down for me. You know what I mean? He gave me, you come in with these ideas, and I want to work on Spider-Man, Superman, right? And I was so fortunate to have him. And mind you, he was a Caucasian man, right? He was. I mean, he laid it out for me. It's like, this is what you're gonna do. This is what the editors. This is what And I'm like, why would anybody sign up for this? Right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Knowing, I'm like, why? So for me, always wanting to have agency. It was about knowing that, again, if I'm going to be a Black creator, if I'm going to have my own company, I have to be able to at least compete with them. And how do I know? Because remember, back then there was a gold standard, right? They were the gold standard. Marvel and DC, you remember a time where it was not cool to be an independent. People don't understand that. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was not cool to be an artist alley, right? If you didn't have a Marvel DC invite, to do signings and stuff. And so, for me, it was about knowing that at least if they wanted me, then I was good enough to start this. You dig what I'm saying? Because I wanted to make sure that it was of the same quality that if you saw it on the shelf next to Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, right, that it could hold its own, right? Didn't have to be, I didn't have to be top. I just had to be competent.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so, knowing that, it's both disturbing while simultaneously validating, because a lot of people thought I was crazy then. They're like, and mind you, the guys I was with, they're now 25, 30-year vets in the industry. I was the first one offered out of that crew. Yeah. And I don't mention their names, but now they're like mainstays, cover artists and volumes of books. But I was actually the first one given the golden ticket, and I turned it down. And they thought I was nuts. They thought I was absolutely nuts. But wow. So when you see where the character is now, and of course you will have here's the beautiful thing that I give you credit for. You have no shortage of ideas, because despite what it's done, you have mastered the power of the pivot. You know what I mean? Right. That's what we do in basketball. The power of the pivot. The power of the pivot. And just watching just what you've done with Darkstorm. You know, I do have my copy of Darkstorm. Yes, exactly.
He's had that book for so long. This
is hot, man.
Well, the second issue goes to the printer in about a week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will be there. I will be there. We definitely have to cover that. Now, here's my question. Knowing what you know of me, do you want a review of the book?
Very, very objective.
I'm objective.
But you know what, man? But here's how I look at all that. You know, I see how this industry works,
right?
And you're gonna have to take the good with the bad. Right? I've been given some sound advice by a lot of filmmakers and producers, and they say, Kevin, never listen to the reviews, even the good ones. It doesn't matter because what matters is that are you going to do it? Are you going to be able to do it again? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Are you going to be able to do it again? And you know, there's this Bible verse I like to quote sometimes. It's like, be careful what you hear.
Yes. Yeah.
And you know, because a lot of times, you know, like you hear some of these comments and they don't know the reason why they're done. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And, you know, but my thing is, as long as you like it and you're satisfied with it, man, I can give a flying fig Newton Bro, you know,
it's an opinion.
Anybody else says.
It's an opinion. What you just said, the reason my son resonated with that is I used to train athletes from Pee-wee to pro in basketball, right? And he was my beta test. He was my beta test. And one of the things I used to always instill in him, especially as he started making the papers and whatnot, is to ignore all of it. I said, because if you submit to their praise, you'll also have to submit to their criticism.
Yep.
And you can afford neither, right? You can't. You really can't afford neither. And so be gracious, take it, and move on. The question is, can you perform next game? Period. Right? You know, because a lot of people take this stuff to heart. And even when I do my critiques, I'm like, this is my opinion, right? It's not an indictment against the person. You probably saw my review of Eric July. His people were very gracious in the comments because they knew it wasn't personal. It was not personal. It was objective for me as a professional, as a student.
But sometimes I think it is. Now, not with yours, but
sometimes it is.
I think that's what bothers a lot of creators because look, you know, here's the thing. You know, doing creative work, especially for a living, is hard. You are one of the few who has stepped outside the comfort zone. And you have dared to do it.
You dare to do it.
And so
The
man in the arena. Yep.
Exactly. So here comes some bloke, you know, who says, I don't like this, who never had, you know, the intestinal fortitude to go out there and do it himself.
Even try.
And he's critiquing your work. And my thing is, where's yours? Now, I remember the first, believe it or not, the first negative reaction I had to a critic. I think I was 17. And Siskel and Ebert were reviewing a movie called Scanners. And they excoriated it.
Michael Ironside.
I'm like, what in the world are they looking at?
Right.
You know, it's like, this movie is great. Well, you know what?
Phenomenal.
It ain't for them.
Right.
You know, man, there are these guys who don't write stuff like that.
Right.
They never like stuff like that. So when you get them to criticize your work or that kind of stuff and they give it the negative review that they did, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
You know, and then I started to see a pattern over the years. Critics excoriated Blade Runner. Now it's hailed as one of the best science fiction movies of all time. People didn't like Highlander when that first came out.
Right.
Now it's spawned a franchise, a cult franchise. They didn't like Reservoir Dogs, you know, and that made Quentin Tarantino a star. It's like you look at stuff like this, and you know what, man, you have to realize who it comes from. And then, unfortunately, the way I've seen a lot of it, especially on the internet, like when it comes to black stuff, it seems like a lot of our own people are going to be the most critical.
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
And,
100%.
and
yes.
You know, you're like, why is that? And why are these white guys giving you praise that you can't get from brothers? And they're the ones with the money. And they're trying to hire you to do more stuff. But brothers ain't giving you a dime. And it's like,
preach,
man.
You know, he's talking too much truth.
And so, you know, you look at that and it's like, there's something wrong with this picture, you know? And, you know, like I said, I to a large extent, I just ignore it. If I'm praised, I say thank you. If I'm, you know, criticized, it's like, hey, you know, glad, you know, sorry you didn't like it. Maybe you'll hang around for the next time.
Facts.
But don't get personal.
Don't get personal.
Yeah. Because see, my thing is, I don't like the internet tough guy. You know what I'm saying? And my thing is that if you see me in person, are you willing to square up? are you willing to square up like you did on the internet? You know, and it's like, and you know what the answer is.
I think this man might be. I think he might be some type of kin us or something.
He got to be kinfolk, man. You got to be kinfolk, man. Oh my God!
I'm like, you know,
ain't no tough guys in this room, bro. You know what I mean? I'm like, if I roll, I'm like, it's funny. I did a reaction video to my flogging from that one group I mentioned to you, right? I didn't put it out because I didn't want this channel to be about that. You understand what I'm saying? And I was still a little incensed when I did it, you know, and so trying to hedge against my own bias and my own tendencies. But I'm like, you're going to see me at a con, bro. Yeah. I got a school. I got students all over the country. What happens when you're in my presence? You dig what I'm saying? Why does it have to even be that? You know, our hashtag here is Keep It Geek, right? Yeah. We do this so we don't have to be tough guys. We do this so we can escape, right? The worries and the troubles and the fight and the war. This is why we do this. Yeah. You know what I mean? So quit trying to be a tough guy in comics, man. You know,
exactly. Like I remember back in the early '90s, it was the days of the old. I don't know if you remember this. It was the days of the old AOL boards.
I do.
You know,
I do.
And I remember they were excoriating Rob Liefeld. You know, and I think it was around the time he decided, you know, they were going to do that Marvel, that Heroes Reborn stuff. And, you know, I remember saying that, you know what, any one of us would give our eye teeth to be where he is.
Facts.
And you're going to treat him like this. What are you guys doing? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's when, like I said, in the comic book industry, I started to look at a lot of these critics, and I'm like, I don't want to hear a word from you guys because you ain't doing nothing.
You ain't doing nothing. You ain't doing nothing.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's like, no one cares. Facts. You know, I know guys who are hypercritical, and they have drawn comic books that you can't find. You know what I'm saying? No one knows who they are.
Right.
And I'm like, and I'm not saying they don't have a right to speak or right to their opinion.
For sure.
But understand that when the rubber meets the road, you know, you can go to a comic book store and see that cat, you know, this guy's work. I go to a comic book store, I can't find yours.
Crickets.
Yep. Why?
Crickets.
Why? You know? And you see, that's where I have a real issue with some of these guys. And, you know, look, I understand that there's this philosophy that the customer is always right, but that ain't really true.
That's not true.
Yeah. And when they start getting insulting, it's like, why did you take it there? And I think that's where a lot of the, you know, caustic discourse, you know, comes from, because these fans think that they can say anything and, you know, and everything, you know, to a guy. Right. And it's like, no, you can't. You know, they want to be able to say anything they want to with impunity.
Right. You have to be.
We're all men. We're all men here. This ain't the old days.
If you ain't family, family now.
This ain't the old days. You know, where you had, you know, geeks with, you know, pocket protectors,
right?
You know,
right,
and all that other stuff. It's like, nah, not anymore. Not anymore.
Bro,
and, you know, geeks in our community have always looked different. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Thank you. Sure. You know, tatted up on the corner, walking the block.
And the thing is, like if you listen to like some of the old rap, like Chuck D, they would mention like the Mighty Thor and Prince Namor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, these guys knew their way around the comic book world. You gonna call them punks? I don't think so.
Right, for sure.
Right.
I don't think so. And so,
ain't no tough guys in comics, man. Again, we do this so we don't have to be tough. You know what I mean?
I mean, we're all having fun. Who wants to fight over stuff like this? You know, man.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, man. We're just having fun. But, you know, that brings me up to another thing. I think that's why, one of the reasons why comics aren't as exciting as they used to be at Marvel and DC because the creators, they haven't really been through anything. You know, man, I mean, like if you look at Jack Kirby, well, I won't even, I can mention Jack Kirby.
Yes.
But, you know, you look at Jack Kirby, he fought in World War II. In fact, I think he was in Normandy.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And he grew up in the hood. He grew up in the slums.
Exactly. Exactly. You look at, you know, you guys know who Denny O'Neil is.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know that Denny O'Neil, he was on one of the naval ships.
Yep.
During the Cuban Missile Crisis. On that, you know, on that blockade.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these guys grew up fighting. You know what I'm saying? You know, if you dealt with a bully, you had to say, well, either I'm going to run or I got to square up.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, exactly. And so that's why the action movies or the action, you know, serials influence comic books so much. But now people don't grow up like that anymore.
Right.
You know, and so now the conflicts in comic books, for the most part, you know, they're all about arguing.
They're fabricated.
Yeah,
they're illegitimate.
You know, arguing and, you know, verbal conflicts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there, you know, sometimes you get books with no action. Like I remember, if this is pre-pandemic, right? Now, look, I am a John Romita Jr. fanatic. Okay, I love his artwork.
Me too.
You know, say what you want to about it now. I still like it. So before the pandemic, there was a Superman book he was drawing, right? And there was this issue that had Superman on the cover with his costume ripped. He had skinned knuckles, broken nose, blood trickling out of his lip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be good. So I just picked it up, you know, plucked it off, you know, off the rack. Man, I got home. There was not a single fight in that whole book. And I'm like,
they had verbal discourse.
yeah, exactly. And of course, you know that bad boy cost $5. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm out of $5 for this.
For this.
$20 now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you know what? That's not. You know, I think comic books have really forgotten who their audience is.
They have.
But I look at independent books. Independent books are largely better than what you find in Marvel and DC.
Truth.
You know.
Truth.
Yeah. The Boys. Exactly.
The Boys. Yeah.
You know, you look at stuff like that. Now, I don't like the hyper violent stuff.
Right.
But I do like action and I do like battles. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
That's what I like. You know. And the reason I say, you know, the hyper violent is because, and this is just a personal thing. I remember when I saw, I think it was the Ultimates, and they had these giants, you know, and I thought it was cool for the military to use giants, you know, the Pym part of the giant and all that. I'm like, man, I'm like, man, this is cool. But they had these heroes flying through them like projectiles.
like bullets.
Exactly. You know, like bullets. And I'm like, well, now giants are a liability. So now the fantasy is gone. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I'm like, and I said, that's going too far. You know. You know, if you know, there's more area to hit, but if you're gonna go right through them like that, it's like, oh, please. They're a liability now, and it's a waste of money. And no,
what I like what you just touched on is I think largely, and that's, I can give you a brief critique right now. What I think about your work, it's fun. It's fun. Like you're having you are writing and creating what was near and dear to you. And because I grew up in a similar era, right, where it was not something to be taken so seriously. You know, it's not about, I think we have lost the joy of fantasy and escapism for reality. And we're trying to bring reality to a medium that was meant to counter reality. Literally.
Exactly.
It was made to counter reality. And we're bringing so much reality. Analysis. Yeah, we're bringing so much reality to it that, again, we're losing the fight in comics because now that reality is 20, 30 plus, not 5, 10, 15 years of age.
Exactly. Excellent analysis. Excellent analysis. Because like my goal was to recreate what I grew up with, 70s and 80s comics, where it was just raw fun. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you didn't have to think about the outside world. I mean, look, we still had to go to school.
Facts.
That was outside world enough. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so if you could escape from, that, for a couple of hours, you get your, you get your bag of Jay's potato chips, man, whatever it is, man, your drink, and you just read comics and have fun. That's what it was about, But when you start bringing in too much reality, then it's like, it's just bringing the outside world in, and you can't escape it, and I just don't think that is, I just don't think that's fun.
I don't think it's sustainable. I don't even think it's sustainable. To be quite honest.
Well,
because if I have a choice of, as a fan, to face the real world, like, you got to remember, I was a cop in the hood, man. We're talking Robert Taylor Holmes, Cabrini Green. I did all of them, special units. I saw it all. Even then, as an adult, which is how I was able to get my kids into it, it was escapism for me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want that relived in the pages that I'm buying. You understand? And let that be the lion's share of your story. And whether it be identity politics and all this, I'm like, can we just leave that?
Yeah.
Can we just leave that to the news, to the media? Can we just have fun here?
I can attest to it because literally he would come on because he would work nights and he would come on. First thing he would do, we wake up, we would go to near Dalton in Calumet City and we go straight to the comic book store to Amazing Fantasy. It literally was the escape. He would wake up from work. He's like, all right, you want to go to the comic store? And we go to the comic book store. Literally. So it literally was supposed to be escape. Now it just mirrors the real world too much. So you're never getting away from anything. And now you, after time, you just kind of push to the side because it's the same as everything else. It's the same TV you watch every day. It's nothing different,
Exactly. And so, that's why I keep it just, plain and simple, raw action, keep it fun, Yeah, man. I mean, that's just what, makes it cool, That's why I think a lot of people, they like old school football. It was just fun, man. I mean, you used to go out there, just, you weren't trying to kill nobody, but you were trying to put them down.
Right. Right. You had to search yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's just how it was,
No, you bring some very good points. Like I said, when I read your stuff, when I do critiques of people's work, my baseline is always, what did you intend for it to be? You dig what I'm saying? And that's usually my baseline. It's not apples to oranges. It's, all right, what did you intend? Like when I critiqued Isom, it was based solely on what he said he would deliver. And did you fulfill the promise to deliver? That's it. Right? I wasn't trying to compare him to Marvel. I was trying to compare him to DC. You know what I mean? No, this is a new thing. Did you hit those benchmarks? And like, even when I review your book, it's the same thing. Like, what are you trying to say? Did you say that well? And part of that is, of course, you have to be kind of versed. You know what I mean? I think my son will attest. I'm very diverse and eclectic in my reading habits. Because I believe that's the best way to stay objective. You know what I mean?
Yes.
As opposed to pigeonholing myself into a specific genre and aesthetic. And I kind of brought that from me with animation, having to draw on model. Right? When people see my stuff, they're like, oh, all of this is your work? I'm like, yeah. But my work is diverse because I draw to the aesthetic of the story. Right? It's not like, like you mentioned Rob Liefeld. He's Rob Liefeld everywhere. Right? And I'm like, well, I may not be able to be Rob Liefeld in this book. You know what I mean? Am I diverse enough and skilled enough to make sure that the design aesthetic fits what the writer is trying to convey? You know, and so I kind of bring that to my critique. I'm like, what are you trying to say? And it's so clear because you don't overcomplicate it. To be quite honest, you know, it's not. It's not as smart as you are and as educated as you are. You could go there. Your ceiling is high, and so what I like about it is that you don't go there. You know what I mean? You keep it very receptive, right? You can easily digest it. You dig what I'm saying? You can you see it play out. It's not overly complex. It's not everybody thinks that they have to be high concept. Yeah. You know what I mean? Everything has to be high concept.
I think you can be high concept and complex with not being complicated. You know what I'm saying?
Or pretentious.
And I think what happens, exactly. But I think what happens though is this too. A lot of times your editors will push certain directions, and someone told me something that I had to really think about and capitulate to and say, you know what? I can see why that happens. Mm-hmm. So the conversation had to do with, you know, why don't editors or why don't writers choose these obvious directions for some of these storylines? You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I was told by another writer-editor that a lot of times these editors have seen everything. You know what I'm saying? And so their whole thing is they want to see something different. Yeah. Just different. Mm-hmm. Even though it might not make a whole lot of sense, it's different. You know, like I'll tell you one of the things that happened to me, which, you know, and I guess I understood it after I was told. So I was writing the New Warriors, and, you know, I had a lot of work to do during that time period because I had I think it was a Spider-Man family book I had to do. They were going into Secret Wars, and I was getting ready to shoot a movie, and I had to leave the country. And I tried to do all of this before I left so I could think with a clear head once I got, you know, to New Zealand. Right. So the editor that I was working on one of the books, he took a long time getting back to me where I could have finished that book in September. And all he had to do was read the outline, which was 1 page. And he didn't do that for 3 months.
What?
Wow. 3 months. Wow. So now that's due. And then I have this other book due with the New Warriors. So the issue is that they wanted somebody in the New Warriors or whatever, the book, they wanted me to justify why the new Warriors were fighting the old New Warriors. So I came up with what I thought was a simple answer. Okay, well, the old New Warriors think the new Warriors are Skrulls. Don't you know they didn't like it? They wanted me to come up with something else. And I'm like, why? I'm like, okay. I try to come up with something else. And the main editor said, this is ridiculous. And I'm like, okay, you know, fine. And went on to say, and he said, well, I'm going to fold in this other writer who I knew, whose number I had, who was working on a sister book, a companion book. And he said, well, run it by him and see what he thinks. So he writes what was kind of like, at least, and you know how, your words sound when you're writing. They sound much more caustic than you intend for them to be.
Right.
So he writes this, what seems like a scathing response. And he's like, guys, I don't get it. Why not do the simplest, most organic idea and say that the old New Warriors think the new Warriors are Skrulls?
That's right.
And I'm like, okay. So I'm waiting for my editor to say, well, Kevin came up with that already, and it was rejected. But of course, he threw me under the bus, didn't say anything, and I look like an idiot.
Wow.
And so I called the writer who said this. I'm like, dude, I said that 3 months ago, and they told me no. And he was like, Kevin, welcome to Marvel Comics. and I'm like, man, and it's like that stuff happens.
Yeah.
That's so that, but he told me, and that's one of the lessons I learned about how things work. With a lot of these editors, sometimes they hear so many different ideas that they just want to hear something different. Even if it doesn't make sense, it's different. And so that's what passes off. And then there are other reasons why I think that comics might not be as good or as fun as they used to be. And this is a harder one for people to hear. But a lot of these writers are not, especially in this market, are not giving up their good ideas and giving them to Marvel and DC. They're like, no siree, Bob.
Yeah.
Their thing, I can save this idea for my own IP.
Right.
So I will, I'm not saying they're phoning everything in, necessarily or per se, but they're like, I'm saving my best stuff for me.
For sure.
Because I can control that. And the last thing you want to do is give them a killer idea that you see, them utilize for a TV series or a movie, and you're having a hard time paying your mortgage. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Right.
And it's like, that would have done it. Because as a comic book writer, dude, with the amount of money you make working for the big two, unless you're a top shelf guy, what are you making? 150?
Right.
At the most.
Right.
Yep.
And that will only work if you are single living in squalor.
Facts.
If you have a family, you have to write more. You have to probably write 4 books.
Yeah.
5 books a month.
Right.
In order to survive.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you have a family. And the thing is,
And don't let that book get canceled.
Don't let it get canceled.
Don't let it get canceled.
Now you're upset and you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. It's like, how am I going to replace this? And since the market is soft now, it's going to be hard to replace. Or sometimes you just like, if you're big enough, you can say to Marvel, hey, give me anything, whatever. And remember, I had to have I call it one of these Cosby conversations with my daughter once about how expensive it is to live. And, we own a condo in LA. It's apart from our house. And I was telling her that when I first lived there, the rent was only $450 for a 1-bedroom. Okay, now this is where I met my wife, because I think I moved in here in like the summer of 93, and we met in 94. But at the time, I was only paying $450 for a 1-bedroom, and I paid that for the next 7 years I lived here. And I told her, do you know how much we could get for that place per month if we were to rent it out? She said, what? $2,500.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, bro, the place is not worth that much. I mean, what are you getting? I mean, that place is a small 1-bedroom at that. Like when you're getting out of college, man, and you don't have any furniture. Yeah, that's the place you live.
That's the place.
But if you move in this bad boy, you have a comic book collection. Oh man, you fight for space.
Oh, I lived in one of those.
Any statues or action figures.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I love it.
So the thing is, you're gonna need to take the money. Where I'm going with this is that when you come up with these IPs or whatever, they need to work for you and you alone long term by turning them into a TV series, a movie, a video game, something else that's going to parlay into you being able to make a good living. And working for Marvel and DC and giving your best ideas away is not conducive towards that. It really isn't.
Wow.
It really isn't.
I can attest to that because since opening Ka-Pow 3 years ago, just seeing the paradigm shift in the culture and the aspirations. Again, when we were coming up, you and I, it was Marvel or DC or bust. It really was, you know. And now, because all of our students, they're adult classes. Everybody's going the independent route. No one, because one of the first questions we ask them in their first interview is, "What are your goals?" Yes. When I tell you in 3 years, we have not had one student that says, "I want to work at Marvel and DC." No. Not one.
Yeah.
Not one. You hear what I'm saying? They want to do their own webtoon. They want to do their own webcomic. They want to do their own Kickstarter. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a huge paradigm, and I think it's the cautionary tales that have been told. Yeah. You know, like the ones you share.
And that's why when I look at what Eric July has been able to do, or some of these other crowdfunders, so encouraging. My thing is like,
absolutely.
Because in fact, I think I told Eric, I don't think you realize what you're doing or what you have done.
Yeah.
With this paradigm shift you've created, because now he's one of the top 10 comic creators. Just in terms of money, you're making money.
Yeah. $7 million in less than a year.
Yeah, exactly.
In less than a year.
I have this one friend of mine. Right, he was working. He had some civilian job. I can't remember what it was, but he was a comic artist, and he never really reached any great heights. But he did a couple of Kickstarters, and they got funded. $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. But he started to build an audience over time. And so, as I, remember the story, he was saying that, he got 54,000 one time. And then the next one he did 6 months later, he made 72,000. And it's like, he quit his job. And now that's the only thing he's doing. And that is the way to do it. You build an audience by having a cool channel like you have here. You know what I'm saying? And that's where you get your audience. They come to buy your wares. You engage them, blah, blah, blah. And the word spreads. And then you start to do your thing with your crowdfund. And you make your living that way, And it's like, that's the better way. Now, of course, man, I still love those Marvel and DC characters.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I mean, my favorite book growing up was the Fantastic Four. And when you look at Fantastic Four, I guess, I think I'm going to say issue 33 all the way up to like 77. Or no, 79. Man, that was the best run that comics has ever had of any title. They created, Jack and Stan created so many cool concepts and characters. I think it's unparalleled.
Yeah, for sure.
And I want comics to get back to that. Or, Jay, you're too young to remember. But, when you start talking about the X-Men, you're talking about Giant Size X-Men #1 all the way, really for 20 years.
20 years.
That book was top flight. And it's like that John Byrne run from issue I think you can consider it all the way up until he left. So you're talking giant size X-Men all the way to, you know, X-Men. I think it was 143, 144 when he left. You know, man, that there was nothing like that book. You were waiting each month with bated breath to get that next issue. No one's waiting for comic books like that anymore.
No,
it's a shame. And the X-Men isn't even a cool book anymore.
It's not.
Not even a cool book anymore.
No,
it's not.
You know, the characters aren't heroic. You know, they don't. You know, there are 20 X-Men books a month. You know,
it's overly diluted. Yeah, it's diluted. And here's the thing that and maybe you can attest to this. I don't know, Jay, you got another question for Brother Grievous?
No, I don't.
Okay. Maybe you can attest to this. This has been my observation. Again, you know, being a writer artist myself, the overall talent pool when it comes to writers seems to have gotten extremely shallow. Like they're not even telling good stories. And I'm like, even when you have studied the craft, as I'm sure you have, of just writing story, right? The hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, right? Screenplay by Sid Field, you know what I mean? Whatever the case may be, just storytelling structure is absent. Effective story, let alone compelling stories. I'm reading some of this stuff. I'm like, what are you doing? And then they wonder why even the remaining readers, again, those of us over the age of 40, which is the lion's share of the audience now, why we're tapping out. I'm like, you know what? And we're going to back issues. Like when I was just in Texas, I secured a partnership with a local store down there. But they had this huge back issues, and I bought some. You're going to love them, Jordan. But I saw my childhood, Mark Silvestri's run on the X-Men. Remember, with the Adversary and Inferno. I'm like, oh my gosh. You know what I mean? They're not telling compelling arcs anymore. You know, and I'm like, what? In your estimation, what is it going to take to get back to that? What do you think is going to have to happen? Do you think it's got? Because Mark Waid said burn it all down. Mark Waid says burn it all down.
I think you are talking about a fundamental shift and rebooting of the creative mindset that or crucible in which these stories are created. You know, and I think it has to do with the culture war. You know, a lot of people don't want to get into that, but that's what it is. Because you can, you know, let's say, you know, you get rid of all the guys who are working now. Well, then you still have the younger kids who grew up in this culture war, and they're only going to do the same thing. Or it's going to be worse. You know, but you're also, like I mentioned before, you're also now going to have to deal with, which I think is, which might be bigger than the culture war, I think is corporatization. You know, like there are some things that I think, and I'm going to look at Marvel because they're the industry leader, that they did that when we were kids, they would have never done. Marvel wasn't big into sidekicks and families. You know what I'm saying? That was DC's shtick, you know? And, you know, so you weren't going to have, you know, 16 Flashes, you know, 24 Supermen, you know, 109 Batman, you know, all that stuff. You know, now Marvel has gotten to the point where now you have like 6 Hulks, you know, 15 Thors. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, there's a female version, a black version, a gay version, a kid version, an animal version of all these characters. And it's like, what are you doing? Now, I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to, but I do think it's true. There is a certain aspect of that I think legally they feel they have to do in order to keep other people from doing variations on their characters. Like for instance, I heard there was a story, and I heard this in the 80s, I think, when they were doing the Incredible Hulk TV series. One of the producers came to Stan Lee and said, "You do realize that if we wanted to, we could create a female version of the Hulk, and you would not own that version, and there was nothing you could do to stop it."
I remember that. That was Stan Lee. Yes, I do remember that. Yes. Yes, when he was shopping for television rights.
Exactly. Because they did it with the $6 million man.
Yes.
You know, and they created the $6 million woman, or the Bionic Woman, I'm sorry.
Bionic Woman,
And there's nothing they could do about it. And then they had, as you saw, they had the Bionic Boy and the Bionic Dog, you know, after a while. So Stan Lee was so shook that he called Marvel immediately. He says, "Look, I need a female version of all the characters we licensed immediately." So they created She-Hulk, they created Spider-Woman, they made Frankie Ray the female Human Torch. They already had Namor Rita, so they couldn't, you know, the Submariner was cool. And I think Clea, they already had her. So that was hard. But, you know, that's when you got those female characters. Miss Marvel. They created a female Captain Marvel, you know. So that no one could do anything with the IPs that Hollywood was hovering around. And so, you know, fast forward to, 2010, Marvel was probably thinking, you know what? We have to address the culture war by having more diversity, but there's a legal reason why we might have to do this too. And, you know, that's where you get what you got now, or corporate reason. And that's why we have what we have now. And so, you know, it is what it is. You know, it is what it is.
Yep. You got Miles Morales, Kamala Khan. You got all these different variations, different races, different genders.
The thing is, you have, what's the Ironheart?
Ironheart. Riri Williams.
And, what makes it bad is that, the tenets of the culture war are such that they have to say that the new character is better than the old character.
Right.
Yep.
Both in power level and morals and worth. You know, like I remember there was this awful line in that Batwoman TV series where, I don't know what her name is, but she said that I don't want Batman getting credit for my work. I'm like, you're wearing a version of his costume. You know what I'm saying?
Say stop.
You're using all the Bat motifs he already used before.
Right.
But that's just that culture war contingent.
Right.
That just wants to take, or bastardize.
Right.
Or copycat without any real creative responsibility.
Right.
Right.
And I think it's just sad. I really do.
Now, you get nothing but amens and yeses for me on that one. You bring up like an interesting point that I want to get your take on, especially as a Black creator. It's been a very hot topic on, of course, diversity, equity, and inclusion in across mediums. I'm not a fan, personally, how it's been handled. Okay, let me put it that way. How it's been handled. We spoke earlier on the importance of representation, right?
Yeah.
But representation that's genuine, that's authentic, and that, quite frankly, is qualified. You know what I mean? And so when we're seeing all this new trend of pandering, like I'm not a fan of race swapping. I'm not a fan of gender swapping. Again, we spoke, like when I connected with Spider-Man or Captain America, it wasn't through their skin color. It was through other values that we held mutually, things that were important to me, or journey, right? But on the flip side, yes, I want to see, more characters. This is why a character like Icon was so important. Why Blue Marvel was so important. You know what I mean? Is because you're giving us, granted, they may be somewhat derivative, but as the Bible always tells us, there's nothing new under the sun. It's about innovation. I tell my students, it's not about originality. Originality is a myth. It's not. You're not going to be original. What you can be is innovative.
Yes.
Right? This is what I teach my students. Innovate. Don't worry about originality. Right? Take something that exists, make it better, or make it your own. Innovate. Right? And so, with that being said, with what you're doing with Darkstorm, you seem to be taking innovation, and I don't know how to properly classify it. Darkstorm and Astounding, are they the same, or they're two different entities?
They're the way I look at it is that Astounding is my all ages imprint.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
All right.
So Darkstorm is a larger, is the stuff that you get for things that would be considered more mainstream.
Okay.
More quote unquote adult. But then again, my adult means ages 14 and up. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But the all ages stuff is just an art style that skews younger. You know what I'm saying?
Got it.
And that's what I like. I like that too. Like, the Vindicators book I did back in 2007. I found this artist who had this amazing art style. And I said, you know what? Let me tap this cat to do.
He was an Italian artist, wasn't he? He was Italian, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, he was from Argentina, but they have an Italian population.
Right.
Lionel Castellani.
I was looking for his name. Castellani.
Exactly.
Yes. I came across that stuff on DeviantArt back in the day. He was posting stuff on DeviantArt.
Exactly.
Yes.
And man, it's like, I was like, oh my goodness, this art is gorgeous. Sick.
Yeah, it was gorgeous.
And I like stuff like that. So that's why I did that, just to keep them separate. Yeah. There was not going to be any real cross-pollination in terms of crossovers, although I am bringing the Vindicators, as you saw in Darkstorm, to my Darkstorm universe, at some point. So yeah.
So you, we're not going to keep you much longer. I know you are a busy man, and we thank you for your gracious time, man. Seriously. Needless to say, I don't do fandom. My son knows that. He's like that too. I don't do fandom of a person's craft or their ability. I'm a fan of character. Absolutely. And you have earned some fans today, brother. Know that. Seriously. You've earned some fans today. With Darkstorm and Astounding, I know you just recently had a new Kickstarter, which I did support, Gentara.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah, Gentara. I'm excited to see because it seems something that is, obviously to date, from what I've seen in my exposure to your work, most of the characters have been, by and large, you. This they've been by and large you. I don't hate. Listen, man, Samuel Jackson always plays Samuel Jackson. The Rock always plays The Rock. He wasn't Black Adam. He was The Rock. Right?
You know what though, man? I'm gonna share something with you. I mean, how many of us growing up wanted to be big and strong?
Dude,
you know what I'm saying?
You preach to the choir. You preach to the choir.
Man, and so, I don't know any boys who didn't try to pattern themselves after what they aspired to be and whatnot, man. You see, I can tell you the issue in the panel of Luke Cage that made me say, oh, I want that build right there. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's what I want. And so my thing is like, dude,
why not?
Why not create a hero? Yeah, why not create a hero?
No, and I hope that didn't come off as a knock. I'm being sincere. I get it. You dig what I'm saying? I know. So I meant no offense. But what fascinates me about Gentara is that she's not you. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm really curious to see where you go, because it seems like a very different direction for you. You know what I mean? And I know what I'm in expectation of, because when you do that, there's an expectation of expansion. You understand what I'm saying? And how is it working on Gentara? Tell us a little bit about that. I know the Kickstarter's over, but I'm sure you're going to have it for sale.
Yes,
but I'm getting my copy. So
okay. So Gentara, she is a DCPD detective, and she discovers that she is part of an ancient race of Jinn. That was unbeknownst to her, who are basically trying to gain ascendancy over humanity in the modern era. And basically it's up to her to stop it, to stop this war between them. And, she's like this prophesied genie, because that's the, the anglicized term for Jinn. And now she has to discover, does she engage in this world and just forget about these powers? But if she enters the world, will that dark power seduce her? You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm dealing with. And there's a whole lot of tasty things going on in there.
I'm excited.
And man. And so it's really cool. We have this great artist named Elmo Bondoc. I originally did it with Zenoscope. Okay. And now we're putting it all together, man. And we got a couple of more pages we're adding, some new material. Okay. And it should really be cool, man. Really be cool.
Okay. Well, as you move forward, I'm just putting it out there. My son knows this is a big deal. So take it for what it's worth. But if I'd be open to doing some work with you, and I don't do that because I have my own studio.
Good, man.
I know you sent you asked for my page rate once in our correspondence, and I said I don't think he quite understood what I said, because I hate talking via text. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's only because, like I said, I am a creator myself, and I'm very selective because this is a part of who I am. You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
So some people just take jobs just because, for a paycheck. I actually,
because you're Kevin Grevioux.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? But I'm the guy, he knows this. I turned down a chance to work with Todd McFarlane because there was a conflict in my belief system. I'm like, I just can't. That's just too far away. And he was gracious and everything, but when I tell you, man, I love the direction that you're going. I love your hustle. You've had success by many metrics, but the level of your humility is impressive. It's impressive, man. Especially
I appreciate that.
Especially in this space. Geeks have a tendency to settle on being comic book famous, and they think that says something. You know what I mean? I'm like, if you knew how few of us there were who know who you are, you know what I mean? And they walk around, but I get none of that from you, man. I get none of that from you. It's like I'm just talking to a brother from the hood that gets it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man. I mean, look, what am I doing? Curing cancer? You know what I'm saying, man? Right. Man, I'm making movies and comic books for a living.
Right.
Man, there are real warriors out there fighting a good fight. When you look at, people bringing the gospel to various corners of the planet.
Yes.
Yes. You have soldiers who are getting shot, cops who are getting shot.
Yes.
Out there trying to, defend the neighborhoods and the country, brothers trying to get educations, and doing some good things like becoming doctors and lawyers. I mean, what am I doing? I'm blessed to be able to do what I do, but I also know that it can have good reach, but it's also limited to, and let me not think of myself or it more highly than I ought to. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, in a lot of my work, hey, look, the least I could do is offer a Christian worldview.
Yes.
In a lot of things that I do. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I love that.
Where good is good and evil is evil.
Absolutely.
Right.
And, that's what I like. Man, that causes true conflict.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It's also the best crucible to have. You know, the most fun. You know, when you know who the good guys and the bad guys are, you can cheer for somebody.
Right.
You know, because, you know, we don't have very many heroes now.
It's a lot of
a lot of anti-heroes.
Yeah.
Which last time I checked, that was a villain by definition. Last time I checked, but okay, I'll let you have that. You know. Yeah.
And so, you know, man, I just try to, you know, do this with fun and humility. You know, realizing that, and this is the scary part, it could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It could have gone the other way, man, because I'm telling you, I have people that I have known for years who either stopped speaking to me or got out of the business because they tried and it didn't work out for whatever reason, you know, and I understand that it is difficult. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, like that, when you come along, you're reminders of what they weren't able to do. You know, man. And so, and, you know, like one of the things I say is that, you know, when looking at that reality is, thank you, Jesus, and there, but for the grace of God go I. Because, you know, for a lot of creative people, the film industry, the comic book industry represents the last bastion of hope they have to do something creative in their lives. Because if it doesn't work, you know, a lot of them are thinking it's back to the brick pits, and that doesn't have to be that way. But I just think you have to be willing, which is why I tell people who are trying to get in the industry to kind of diversify your creative lexicon. Because if you think your talents are God-given, then, hey, look, there is another way in. You don't have to follow the traditional role. You can do an end around. You know what I'm saying? You know, you can do other things, and then maybe that will come back later on. You know, but you just have to keep plugging. You know, no one's going to give it to you. You know, you got to take that bad boy.
Absolutely.
You know, you got to take that bad boy. And so that's the way it is.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it, man. Listen, you have dropped some gems, man, and some jewels.
Yes, you have.
How can we support you? How can those watching support? What have you got? What have you got in the works? Any campaigns upcoming?
You know, man, I got two films. I got two films in the works right now. One I can talk about has been announced. It's called Shurika. You know, it's based upon a graphic novel I did, you know, back in 2008 that I'm, you know, redoing again. And we're going to shoot that in Bangkok and Tokyo. You know, we're going to kickstart, you know, that comic book. You know, I got another film project I'm writing right now. Doing, you know, my Darkstorm book will be out soon. My Jintara book that I already kickstarted, that'll be out soon, you know, to be fulfilled. So I'm just doing a couple, a couple, 3, 4, 5 things, you know, to keep things rolling. And Lord willing, I can always be, you know, in the black when it comes to projects ready to go, and people ready to step in and do what needs to be done to, you know, to make them come to fruition. So that's what I'm looking at now.
Well, we are praying for much success, and for those of you who are watching, check them out at Darkstorm Comics. You can get your copies there. I got mine. When I tell you, man, this has been an absolute joy. Seriously, you know, I can't say that often. This has been an absolute joy. We are blessed by your presence here, man, and I'm sure
I appreciate it, brother.
You've encouraged a lot of other people, you know, with your transparency and your honesty, you know, and love to get you back here again. And Jay,
anytime, man, anytime.
Appreciate you.
We appreciate
Thank you. Like I said, as a fan of your work and your art, like this is our first interview. So when my dad told me that we got you, I was like, oh, I'm clearing the rest of the day for this. So
he owns a gym. He owns a gym.
I own a gym. Yeah, I own a gym.
He owns a gym. He's an entrepreneur.
So yeah, so I cleared the whole day. I was like, nah.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question, man. What's your top bench?
My top bench. So for me, I train more for muscular endurance than I do for strength. The heaviest I have benched, I am 6'5", 205. So the heaviest I have benched has been 245. That was my
max. That's cool. Yeah.
Mine has been 315.
I'm a fighter though, so I don't go for strength. I go for more. So I do martial arts and stuff like that. So that's
he's a champion.
I've tried to get into martial arts. It didn't really take for me. I think I took some jujitsu lessons.
The vomit got. Oh,
you didn't like jujitsu?
Yeah.
Did somebody throw up?
Okay. Here's how it started, man. We lived in Boston at the time, and when you're a kid, all you know is karate and the word karate and Bruce Lee. And Kato.
It wasn't popular.
So I remember we went to this demonstration at my school, and I know now what they were doing. They were just going through their katas and their forms, as a school. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I was in there. When are they going to start breaking boards? That's what I wanted to see. I wanted to start breaking boards and bricks and all that, man. And I just couldn't. It just wasn't. I just wasn't
this is what that is. I get it.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, and it's like it's like that. I guess my Mr. Miyagi moment. When he was having to paint fences and doing this and doing that.
Right.
And didn't realize that, Mr. Miyagi was kind of, training him already.
Right.
But I was like, I got to go.
I'm good. No, he actually competes in not only the point sparring, but he competes in continuous, which a lot of people don't because it's full contact. Right.
Okay, cool.
So he competes in the actual brutal part that a lot of people. You got champions that won't compete in continuous because they're afraid to get hurt.
Oh yeah.
They're afraid to get hurt.
Yeah. That's good. Because one of the things that I've noticed, if you don't play,
I'm back.
College ball. If you don't play college ball or whatever, or go into the military or become a cop or a fireman,
right?
Man, you don't get to do any man stuff after high school.
Nope.
You really don't, man. It's like, man, you got to roll up the sleeves and get to work.
Yeah.
And you might get in the gym. Maybe you play a little basketball, but you know how different. It is, man. When you're out working.
Yeah.
Man, you just don't have the time. And then, you know how it is being an athlete. You probably get old in a week. Meaning that there is this drop off at a certain age. Like my heaviest bench was around 450.
Jesus.
And I remember I being able to bench, I think 225 for 30 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my cousin and he was playing pro football for the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And this brother was yoked. You know what I'm saying? And I look at him and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not playing pro ball. Let me put this down.
Right.
Why am I waiting for what?
We all reached that point. Like when I was, I was from the hood. I was actually an potential NBA prospect. But once you stop and real life kicks in, right? It's kind of like I trained in as much as I did because of my work. Right. Fighting was real for me. And I used to tell guys that I would, at the gym, I'm like, if you're fighting more than me, that's a you problem. Because I'm working in the hood. I'm always considered the enemy. And it ain't nothing for a dude to swing on the police. You know what I mean? And we just end, especially if he's not armed, guess what? We fighting. Back then we didn't even have tasers. It was, hey, he ain't armed. We fighting. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. And then you reach that point where you're like, you know what? I don't need all this weight anymore. Like I'm still in the gym 5 days. I'm in the gym 5 days a week. right? I lift light. I just rep. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm old. I got 7 grandkids. I don't need to be moving all this. Move it for what? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, move it for what?
Oh my goodness!
I be seeing them young boys doing all that weight, and my joints just hurt looking at them. I'm like, oh my gosh, that hurts.
Like, yeah, I know. Like I remember this. Like when was this? This is probably right before I got married. I was still working out with like 375 and supersetting and all this other stuff. Right. And I got the weight up here, and I'm like, what the heck am I doing? You know what I'm saying? I'm making movies now. Let me put this down.
Right. There's a point where it just becomes about vanity, right? It becomes about vanity.
Ego lifting.
It's ego lifting. You know what I mean? And so
exactly. And then once the elbow goes, you feel something like, wait, whoa, what's that?
Yeah. Bro, I got an artificial shoulder. I got one fake shoulder. I got an artificial hip. I got titanium pins in the other shoulder. I've had 11 knee surgeries across both knees.
Oh, yeah.
Lift heavy for what? That's a wrap.
I have none of that.
He has, but he had a dad who trained him. He had a dad who trained him the right way, because I didn't have that. Back when we were young, training wasn't a thing. Back when you were an athlete and I was a young athlete, training wasn't a thing. We just played, and we played hard.
Exactly.
That was our training. There was no science behind it. There was no kinesiology behind it. You know what I mean? There was no rest periods. We just went hard, long, and fast. That's it.
Exactly.
On concrete, whatever. Exactly. I'm like, when he came of age, I'd already learned. I'm like, you know what? You will never touch concrete. You know what I'm saying? He was growing in the lab, literally in the gym.
I know, man. Man, y'all had the good sneakers. Yep. We grew up with Chuck Taylors.
Chuck Taylors and Pro Kids.
We used to get from Sears.
And Pro Kids.
I know. Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that's a generation span, man. And we know better and we do better, man. And you are definitely inspiring the next generation, man. Listen, I really want to close out Black History Month with you because you are now officially a part of Black Geek history, man. That's a big thing, bro. Seriously. You are seriously. You have changed the landscape, man. Well, you have changed the landscape, man. You've contributed in a very significant way. And it's funny, when you're doing it, you're just doing it. You know what I mean? You're doing it with intention, with passion, for the joy. But when I look at it, when Jordan looks at it, Jay looks at it from the outside, you've changed the landscape by your contribution. And that's big, man. That's big. You've you've introduced a character and continue to introduce new characters like Darkstorm and Gentara. But if it just ended at the Blue Marvel, which we know it won't, you have changed the landscape, bro. And welcome to Black History, man. Seriously.
I appreciate that, man. I really do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. And with that being said, you guys, this is it for Generation Geek. I'm Doc Solo.
And I'm Jay. Y'all be blessed.
And keep it geek.